In this video, we're going to continue on with variables and work on declaring variables and assigning values. So for this assignment, I actually have a sample for you to start with, just so that we can easily run our program, and we have an event trigger, which is a button in this case, as you can see, so that we can run our function. And we're going to get into you actually creating those events that are going to launch your programs, and we'll definitely talk a lot more about functions. But just for the sake of illustrating the principles, I set up a little template for you that you can just fill in and work with the variables on, and then it'll, just to make that process easier and more streamlined. And as you learn more, you'll actually be doing all of that coding yourself later on. But for now, I'm giving you a little bit of help on that part. So right now, let's just take a look at what we've got here. We've got some HTML. And in the HTML, there is a new tag that you may not have seen before called button. And in button, we just have this property called onClick, and we've set that equal to the function try values, which does not require any parameters, but we still put those empty parentheses there just to show that we're not passing anything and to identify it as a function. And when we come down here into the script, you see that we have a function with that exact name, and it does have to be absolutely exact. If I had a capital letter here, it wouldn't work. So we have this function try values, and then we've got our squiggly brackets. And that's how you bound a function beginning and end, is with the squiggle brackets. And I just put in a couple of lines here. So I have a variable z, and then I have alert z. Now we're going to be declaring variables, so you're going to add in some more content into this function. But just for right now, I just wanted you to see. Right now, we press the button. It says undefined because z does not have a value. Z exists, but it doesn't have any sort of value in it. So obviously the easiest thing we could do in terms of assigning values is just give z some kind of value. And let's give it a numeric value this time. And if we add in that line of code, very, very simple. Remember, equal sign is our assignment operator. It allows us to assign values to variables. And then if I reload, always remember to reload, then it will report back to us z's new value of 25. So let's go ahead and declare some of our own variables, and I'm going to do it in a couple of different ways. So in this one, I'm going to do the declaration of the variable, which is the var x, and the assignment of the value all in one line. Okay. So I'm going to give that a string value. And if we want to check and make sure that that's working, we can just come down here and change the alert from z to x. And having the other lines in there about z, those don't do anything. Those lines of code work fine. We're just not doing anything with z right now. So it'll just sit there. It's not going to hurt anything. And now when we press the button, it reports back to us this is a string instead of 25. Obviously, we see how it's done in separate statements here. Okay. So we can also do that with a numeric variable where you have the declaration, the initialization of the variable, and the value, the assignment of the value all on the same line. That works just fine as well. We can change our alert to y and check out that one. And we get our y value. Now, we can, of course, take our two numeric variables here, and now note, so here's where I've assigned my z value. I can now use, because both y and z have values in them, we can use those variables in expressions. But I have to do that after I've assigned both the values. So if I wrote this line of code here, x equals y plus z, notice I haven't assigned z a value yet. So what do you think is going to happen? And obviously we do want to change the alert to alert x. We get this weird thing, NaN. So NaN means not a number, and it's basically the computer throwing a little fit and saying, you told me to do a thing that's impossible to do. However, if we move this one line of code, one spot, till after we've actually assigned z a value, and then we try it again, the computer is much happier. Now it can add together those two values and give us the result, no problem. Now, this is a very notable thing. And if you've done other types of programming, you might realize that this is a very interesting thing in JavaScript. So typically, historically, in other compiled languages, once a variable is of a specific type, so in this case, I made X a string variable at the beginning here. Typically, once you have done that, you can't just change and put different type of data into that variable. And notice what I did here. I actually turned X into a numeric variable by putting it into an expression with numeric values. JavaScript was totally okay with that. So in JavaScript, you can, on the fly, change the type of variable simply by putting a different type of value into it. So it is important that you initialize the variable using a declaration statement, but once you've done that, it's this very flexible container that it just depends on what type of data you're putting into it. It puts more responsibility on you as a coder to keep track of the type of data in your variables. But what if we tried to do something like this in our expression? Again, we forgot what X is. We think it's a number, so we want to go ahead and perform mathematical calculations on it. Well, then we get the NaN again, and the computer is really not happy with us because plus can work with strings, minus division, multiplication, absolutely not. And it's going to just create an error that's not going to work. Okay, so while it's very, very cool that you can just switch the data types in your variables in JavaScript, it does mean that you have more responsibility to make sure you know what data type you're using in your different variables and to use that appropriately so that things will function in your program. Also, remember, when you get the NaN, that means something went wrong. You got to go do some error checking and figure that out. And also keep in mind the ordering of your statements, right? So we're not using line numbers or anything like that. The ordering of statements is again, very flexible in JavaScript compared to older compiled languages. But you do have to make sure that you're not using a variable in a statement until you've given it a value, right? So you have to have values in things before you use them, or you're really going to cause some problems.